Warning, the following video has flashing lights and also includes content that may be deemed inappropriate for some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. Project Dark Timber and Dogman Diaries by Danielle Steadman has finally found her way into the darkness of the Fox Den. Yes, to hang out with, of course, Mr. Barber and LordeStarfox for another episode of Midnight Lycanthropy. Yeah, I have been sleeping for so long and really do need to feed. Absolutely delicious. And I do appreciate Mr. Barber and Miss Steadman for bringing me nutrients to help, yes, create my power that has been lost. Now, without further ado, it is time for Danielle Steadman, Mr. Barber, and LordeStarfox Radio to take a walk into the madness.
Stood up. I said, oh my god, it's a werewolf. And everybody in the car freaked out.
My creatures of the night, yes, welcome back to Midnight Lycanthropy here on LordeStarfox Radio. We have a very heavy hitter and a legend in the Dogman and cryptid community deciding to allot some time to sit down and hang out with, of course, Mr. Barber and myself around the late night fire as we again burn the timber into the early hours of the morning. Yes, and of course, I am referring to Danielle Ellie Steadman. Whoo, how are we doing tonight, Ellie?
Hey, how are you?
Very good and super happy to finally get a chance to link up with you and try and figure out what is happening with missing people and these strange Dogman sightings. What have you been up to?
Well, I'm trying to get back out there. We actually went to a location last weekend. I picked up some sounds, but I can hear them, but I'm gonna have to bring, like, I don't know, do something to bring them out. I told you earlier I'm not good at the technical side of this, so but we did catch some stuff. We found this crazy old cemetery and we weren't even looking for it. Uh, Dates went back to the 1700s, and one of my best friends was with me, and we recorded everything. So I hope to get it up sometime. Like I said, I have a lot of videos I need to get up if I could just figure out how to do the technical part of it.
Yes, no, it sounds like you are staying busy right there for sure. I will always help you out. I got those logos for you earlier. It really didn't take me too long to do.
Oh, well, I really appreciate you with the logos. I already showed it on my Facebook, and I know people really liked it. So I really do appreciate that because, like I said, I'm bad at this. When I was doing Dogman Diaries, we just did, like here, we were just doing voice, and it was a lot easier to me than when you're actually out videoing stuff and having to edit. Oh my gosh, it's just a whole different ball game, in my opinion.
Yes, it is. This is awesome. Mr. Barber, my guy, how the heck are you doing?
Doing pretty good. Bigfoot season is in full swing, and action's a little hot where I'm at. We got pipes that weigh hundreds of pounds being moved around. Got gifted an old school Christmas tree ornament today. Busy going through that and pictures. And that's all besides the work. It's been a good time.
Excellent. The weather's getting nice for you. This is good. You get a chance to head back out and do some things you enjoy. I love it. And well, to the audience, we are going to let Ellie take center stage here in a second, because you know how I like to run the good old Midnight Lycanthropy. If you are part of the Midnight Society, well, this podcast is your home as well. If I wanted to sit and narrate all my own things, well, I would play in my own mud puddle. Yeah, I do not want to do that. So the more my hosts and guests talk and fulfill us with this epic information, this is what I'm looking for. Yet before we do hand Ellie the good old microphone, I have a really interesting case that I have spoke about with Mr. Barber, yet have not had a chance to get it out to the public. And this video here is going to be dropping in the next day or so. Well, might as well re-air the good old encounter. Let you, Ellie, hear about this. How's that sound before we start dancing, my friend?
Sounds great. I'd love to hear about it.
This is awesome. All right. Well, this gentleman was down in the good old bayou. So, yes, we are referring to Louisiana. Really nice guy. He claims he knows Troy Landry from Swamp People and Swamp Mysteries. I cannot verify that, but yet, as I did some more digging, I can verify Troy himself has actually spoken about this per se encounter. So that can be verified. Yet here we go. It's 2015. This gentleman is out in the good old bayou doing some catfishing. As he is casting away, seemingly this bipedal, strange looking black bear is what he first thought, begins walking towards the water from the dense foliage, completely submerges himself or itself after continuing to walk. Well, as this gentleman is sitting here trying to process what it is he is witnessing, he sees the air bubbles coming up. And to him, he was pretty adamant that these bubbles were coming up as if something was still standing upright, meaning if any of us were just standing underwater, the way the bubbles would come up, not if we were completely stretched out per se like an alligator or a fish or such. Well, he is obviously nervous at this point in time, doesn't move, continues to see the bubbles. A short distance away, this creature gets up, shakes itself off, and then casually walks off into the bayou on two legs. I wanted to hear what you thought about that real quick.
Did he say how far he was from it?
Not to the extent of exact details. He said it when he was out fishing that it was probably maybe anywhere from 20 to 30 yards away on the shore. Yet when he was in his boat, he said that he could have reached over and probably touched where the bubbles were coming up. So definitely at a point in time, near enough to his boat. But then it proceeded to obviously not cause him any sort of trouble a short distance away as well. When it ended up coming up from the depth, showing itself again, it acted like it didn't even see him there.
So how did he describe it? I mean, did he see, like, did it have ears? Did it have a snout? Like, what are we talking about? What did he think it was other than a bear when he was talking to you?
We had actually potentially threw it around with Mr. Barber and some of my other hosts on the science team, thinking maybe potentially did he see a swamp ape or such. Yet sometime in the future, we can dive into some reasonings why I think with some of the behaviorisms, like with the Falk monster and stuff, it falls way more into like the Dogman type behaviors. Yet he said it looked more doggish, if anything, than a Bigfoot or a bear. But at first he said it looked like a bear. But keep in mind, he wasn't going to look out of his way for anything cryptid based. He's just out there fishing. So the first thing he was able to compare it to in his mind was black bear. Yet we do always talk about how that's just not a flaw in humans, but we always try to compare it to the closest thing that our mind can process. Unless we were all there, meaning maybe it didn't look that much like a black bear, but at first that's just how he processed it. But then he said it definitely wasn't a bear. He saw that it had like what looked to be like some sort of canine-ish snout and ears. But the problem is too, bears do have canine snouts. At a point in time, they were related to canines before they all like split off. Amphicenoidae and the Amphicenoidoids were the bear dogs that a lot of the scientists believe could walk bipedal and quadrupedal.
And this was, I'm assuming, was this in the evening or in the early morning?
2015, he said it was. Again, I don't know the best time frame for catfishing, but he said it's pretty much the time that you go out and he has the most luck. You might both be able to educate me a little bit more.
Yeah. My dad's a big catfisher. That's why I was wondering if it was at night or, I mean, some people will go out at night, or if it was more like dusk or dawn when he saw it. Or, I mean, I don't know. I'm sure you've heard of, what is it, the type 3 Bigfoot or whatever that supposedly has a snout. I'm pretty sure it's a type
Yes.
3.
The
So,
Gugway or the baboon like Dogman.
right.
Yes.
So I wonder if, I don't know. I mean, it would be incredible to talk to him and find out more, especially since it was so close to him. I would
Yeah.
definitely like to know more. And I wonder why it did that. That's an odd behavior. I mean, even for, which most people know I don't really like calling them dog men, but I call them UWCs, upright walking canines. That's just a very odd behavior. I don't, I mean, I've heard of them being at the water. I've heard of people seeing them like standing in the water, but I've never heard of one going under the water and just standing there. That's just, it kind of makes you think, what in the world was it doing? I mean,
Right?
but
Yes.
even if it was a Sasquatch, what was it doing? I mean, that's odd. Even for Sasquatch, that's an odd behavior. I mean, for them just to go under the water and stand there, that's really
Right?
weird. I
It's
wonder what
almost
it
like
was
to
doing.
troll him.
Or, I mean, of course, I know I've talked to people who say when they see Sasquatch, especially, it'll freeze or like try to hide, but I wouldn't think it would hide under the water. I mean, I don't
Right?
know. Um, yeah, that's definitely an interesting story because he was he was very close to it, and I know how that feels when you're close to something that, and you're right, people do, they try to, because I know I always have. I mean, even though I've seen something since my first encounter, your brain still tries to process, like, what is that? Or I guess it's more, am I really seeing what I'm seeing? And I think to protect ourselves, a lot of times we want to find an animal we all know, because that just makes you more comfortable, especially when you're out in the woods and you're confronted with something that technically shouldn't be walking around anyway. But yeah, that's really a very interesting story. I would definitely like to talk to him as well. That's an interesting story.
Yeah, of course. Once I do hopefully hear back from him, he doesn't seem to be too much of a Facebook guy. He did message me on Facebook about a week ago now, give or take. Haven't heard back from him yet. He hasn't read my messages either. So I will definitely keep you posted. And at some point as well, on one of our episodes, we can talk about all the encounters that I've had a chance to cover from North Carolina and South Carolina and all around that area if you'd like as well.
Yeah, that'd be great. Where I went last weekend, there was something spotted not long ago. So that was one of the reasons I wanted to go. Supposedly, someone saw one, and I talked to someone who they had already done an interview with another show, and that's how I got in touch with him. But the show didn't get, or I don't know, it just didn't have like a lot of views, and I was shocked because it's such a good Sasquatch encounter. And but last weekend was Memorial Day, and this place was really, really packed. But that's why we wound up going down a different road and finding what we found. But yeah, when you hear of something, especially when it's like close to you, at least for me, I like to go out and like try to get, boots on the ground and get eyes on exactly where it happened. And I can tell you the place I was at last weekend, which is near Uwari, it is very, very dense. I have been to Uwari, but I didn't remember it as dense as where I was, but I was on a different side of Uwari, and it's very, very dense. And there has been a lot of encounters over at Uwari. So it's a new area for me, but I'm pretty excited to see if we can find anything, because supposedly the male Sasquatch over there is fairly aggressive. He's not exactly, from what people say, the friendliest. So I have to keep safety in mind, but I would really like to. I haven't seen a Sasquatch yet. I've heard them, but I haven't actually seen one. I don't really know if I want to see the one in Uwari from what I've heard. But then again, I do. I don't know. I do want to see it, because I've just, everybody I've talked to, they say you have to experience it to believe it when you see one.
Yeah, sounds about right there. That's absolutely epic stuff.
So as far as the swimming individual, if I heard right, it sounded like the ears were more on top of the head.
Yes.
I don't know if Gugway's ears are in a different spot than the other types, so I would be thinking Dogman, because I don't think he would have. I mean, if they're located on the side of the head and they stick up over the head, I mean, that would be like Batman ears or something like that. So, and that's just, again, I'm throwing thoughts out there. But I did read about, and we talked a little bit about one of the encounters up on Lake Superior, where a guy was out fishing in the middle of Lake Superior off Picture Rock, and he had his fish finder goes off, and he sees something large, but it's close enough near the top where he can see that it's a large individual that had a muzzle and was able to see ears almost poke out of the water. And as it got under his boat, grabbed his fish line and gave it a big yank, and then kept going. And he never did see it surface. He kind of freaked out at first and took off, and then decided he wanted to know what it was and went back looking for it, but he never did find it. So,
I'm sorry, did you say that it grabbed the fishing line?
yeah, it gave the fishing pole a yank.
Wow. And it was in the water too, under the
Yep.
water.
Yep. His fish finder alerted into it, and then by the time
That's
he saw the
weird.
shadow, he said it was somewhere between 7 and 8 feet, and it was close enough he could see huge shoulders, ears, and a muzzle type face.
This is so odd. I wonder how many more encounters are out there, because this is the first time I've ever heard about them being under the water like that. So that's kind of blowing me away. Like I said, I've heard of them being in the water. I mean, I know they claim there's some videos out there. I don't know if that one video is real, because you can't see it very good, of those people in Texas with one. It looks like it's drinking from the water. But that is really odd behavior, because I just don't understand why they would be under the water.
I can't either, unless it was literally just a case of, okay, you're there, I want to go over there, so I'm just going to go underneath you.
I always think that, like, for Sasquatch and Dogman, even though they're so big and powerful, I would think because they're so muscle bound and heavy, that swimming would probably be pretty hard for them. I'm not saying they can't do it. I mean, I'm sure they probably can, but I would think swimming would be pretty hard for them. I don't, that is just, I'm trying to wrap my brain around why they would be under the water like that. I mean, they would definitely have probably the lung capacity to hold their breath for a long time, because I mean, from what I know, the one I saw, especially the one up close, I mean, its chest was just so big, and the way, they howl, you could just tell they can take in a ton of air.
Yeah, and maybe they do more like a hippo where they're not swimming, but depending on the depth, walking on the bottom, which would
Yeah,
explain the bubbles that one guy was talking about in Kenny's encounter.
right. It's just really strange behavior. I mean, it's just really strange.
Yeah, it's like the first few times I started hearing about Bigfoot being underwater, I'm like, what? get out of here. And then all of a sudden you start hearing a little more and a little more how they, one report of one snatching ducks from underneath the water. Sometimes it just makes you scratch your head and realize, okay, well, I would have never thought that of them, but where do you draw the line in the sand?
Right. But considering both of them have been able to hide from most of humanity, and in my opinion, for very good reason, because we're not the friendliest. Even though I come from a hunting family, I've openly said I know people are very afraid of the canine creatures, but I don't want them or Sasquatch shot. I just don't want them shot. Not unless it was a situation where it was, the person and their family or the creature, that I can understand. But just to openly shoot one, even for scientific reasons, I don't know, I'm just not down for it.
Oh, I agree with you totally. And I kind of say the same thing in a different way as far as with good reason, because I mean, let's face it, Homo sapiens don't play well with others, because ask a Neanderthal, and then it's like, oh wait, there are none because we pretty much drove them into extinction.
Right.
So Bigfoot was around for that, Dogman was around for that. They know that if something happens to one of us, we're going to come back with a whole lot more of our friends looking for, and bad things happen. So I think they're a lot smarter than what we give them credit for, and intelligence wise and just situational awareness wise. I mean, it's life or non-life out where they live, so of course they're going to know that terrain and every little. Wonder why we can't get a picture. They're going to see that camera, like somebody moving a picture in your house. You're going to know this.
Well, and I'm Native American, and a lot of tribes say you should never point at them. It's just something you shouldn't do. And I've always told people, I think they're intelligent enough to know that anything we point at them, because we have guns, would make them very wary, period. Because, you know, they know that we carry big things that make loud noises, things. So, even a camera, I would think, to one of them, especially at a distance. I mean, I know if I was one of them, I wouldn't take that chance. I wouldn't know if it was a gun or a camera, but I wouldn't stick around to find out either. So I can't really blame them. And I don't know. I have a theory that there are probably a lot more, especially of the Sasquatch, than we realize. And a lot of people, if you really think about it, people a lot of times have trouble in, at least when they're out, like in a forest or, in the countryside or something, they have a lot of trouble just seeing natural animals that are there, even if you point it out to them. Because I grew up in the mountains and on a farm, but like when I have friends from the city, even if I point like a deer out or, even a rabbit or something pretty close by, sometimes it's hard for them to still see it, especially when it's just sitting there, standing there looking at us. And then, after a while, they'll see it. But I told people, and I've been telling people this for years, that the pictures we see in magazines of animals, a lot of times they actually enhance those when they put them in a natural setting, because they know people will not be able to see them if they don't do that. And we're talking about something that many of us have never seen, never encountered. I think people could possibly walk by, especially Sasquatch in the woods all the time, and probably not even know it's there, especially with reports, of them going completely still. And shoot, there's even reports that they close their eyes so people won't see them. So I just think people probably are closer to them a lot of times than they know, but their eyes just aren't trained to see them. And I think the more you train yourself to notice, those odd things out in the forest or, wherever you're looking, probably more people would start to notice, some strange things. But if you can't even see a deer standing in a tree line, what's the odds of you being able to, pick out a Sasquatch at, 200 yards or 75 yards? Probably not going to be able to do it. especially considering they are so good at blending in and hiding. And maybe that's a reason, why we don't know as much, more about them than we already do. Plus, they know we're dangerous and they are highly intelligent. They're not stupid by any means. And I don't know, here lately, I've been just kind of wondering if maybe the national parks and the state parks is a place for them to hide because, most have laws against guns. So, is it a place they could hide? Because I would think they live in these big communities together, or at least that's what it's thought. I believe they obviously have some type of language. So, if they do, to me, it's reasonable to assume that they communicate with each other. And if you found a safe place that you may be able to exist and not have to worry so much about people coming in and you, why wouldn't you go there? I know I would.
Exactly. And one thing that seems to be gaining a lot of traction now is maybe that's why Theodore Roosevelt put into the national parks, was maybe as a safe place for them without having to admit they exist.
Oh, yeah, I completely forgot about that because he was the one president that said that he had seen one.
Yep. So,
That does make, wow, that really does make a lot more sense. Yeah,
and I
because,
agree with you. You're not trained to, I mean, because I've only been actually looking for like the last 4.5 years, and you'll get a kick out of this because, I was never taught how to track something. So this is a whole learning curve for me. But one time I take pictures and I send them to my friends and say, hey, what do you see? And I found a baby Bigfoot tracked, is what I thought. It was like 6 inches long, but it was deep. So whatever it was fairly heavy. So I took a picture of it and I sent it to my friend. And he's like, yeah, that's a beautiful baby track. But what about the big one? And I'm like, what big one? And he circles it and he's like, you moron, you're standing in it. And sure enough, I wear a size 15 shoe and my heel is about an inch above the heel of the track. I'm standing in the middle of it, and about 4 inches above my foot, the toes are, you can see 5 clear toes in the ground. So
wow. Yeah.
it was mama and baby, and I didn't even see the big track. So it was like I probably missed way more than I found.
Yeah, I'm pretty good. I can usually pick up tracks or tell if it was walking or running. Uh, but I think for me, like getting back into this, people always, talk about the tree structures and stuff. And I am not very well versed in the tree structures. I'm trying to learn more about them. The tracks and tracking, that's easy for me, but it's more like, just being out in the forest and being able to spot stuff that doesn't look very natural, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Because it's so hard. Like, I don't know. When I see something weird, the first thing I do is I try to find a reasonable explanation for it. And if I can't find a reasonable explanation, that's when, I go to more unreasonable explanations. And I guess for me, especially in a forest, it's just so hard because you do have so many things that would naturally happen, and then you have to account for all the other animals in the forest, and then you have to account for human beings that might be in the forest. And you know what I mean? You got weather. I mean, it's just, for me, it's really hard to look at a forest, especially when I'm in it in a certain area and go, does that look abnormal? If that makes sense.
Of course it does. Listen to you right there. I love it. Also, too, I really enjoy that you have Native American lineage. I'm a huge fan of making sure to dive into indigenous culture and lore. And I've been doing a lot of work with one of my friends, Ryan Tremblay, trying to make sure people understand the differences between skinwalkers as well as werewolves and all of this, because again, it's super important. And I wanted to, before we dive into some other creepy stuff, ask too if you are ever interested in joining my science team, especially with your tracking background. I would love it. I have 2 trackers at the moment. I have a Lakota medicine man, and I also have one of my friends that is out in California that is part of the Yaqui tribe. He's a master tracker as well. That's something you're ever interested in. It's
Oh,
really simple.
I would absolutely be interested. I can do it because I grew up in a hunting family, but I would not say I'm a master. I could tell when like something's been chasing something, or something's after something, or something's just walking along. But yeah, I would definitely be interested because I want to get more involved in all the communities now that I'm back trying to do this again. You're right. I sometimes I have to remind myself that it's been brought on usually by movies and books, but there is a very big difference between, skinwalkers and wendigos and
Mhm.
werewolves and all of that. And people tend to get them very, very mixed up and confused. It even makes me upset when I hear people say, well, don't say skinwalker. And I'm like, well, if you're probably not saying it in the native tongue, you probably don't have a whole lot to worry about.
Yes. That is what Ryan Tremblay is always saying too. I love it.
I see people that say, "Don't say that," and I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" I just kind of laugh because I'm Cherokee, and that actually has not anything to do with Cherokee. But I mean, if you're Native American, I don't know. I guess in today's world, you try to learn, especially. But I have friends that are Navajo. I have friends that are Apache. I have
Beautiful.
friends that are all different tribes across America. That I have friends in different tribes, but yeah, I just wish people would get more educated and learn the differences. And I think the biggest thing is, for some reason, I don't know why people think skinwalker always refers to, and like I said, I think it has to do with movies and books, but like a werewolf type shape. But a skinwalker can literally be anything, like
Mhm.
quite literally anything.
Yes.
And it's funny that people don't understand that. I'm so glad there's somebody out there that's trying to educate the public and let
It's
them know
important.
that you can't lump them all together, because they really do, especially to Native Americans. A lot of that is it's important to us that people understand that it is part of many cultures, and at least in the Native American community, and it has, there are very big differences in what, and I hate to say it this way, but what non Native American people believe versus what Native American people
Mhm.
believe. I don't know. I was on my friend's podcast a few weeks ago, and my daughter, her dad has a lot of property in Virginia, and he's been having a lot of weird stuff happen up there. And I'll be honest, some of it is at first, because now we're talking about somebody who's a non-believer too. Like, when he heard my story, he literally, I don't think he really believed me all that much. Um, Especially him being a good old mountain boy, uh, until he started seeing and hearing stuff himself after we had split up. And because I had told him I really believed there were Sasquatch on his property, and he started seeing a bunch of weird stuff. And now we have seen all kinds of strange things up there. But he had been telling me about this. He kept saying that it was like this red-eyed. He called it wolf-looking thing, and I told him, I said, from what you're describing, I just don't think that it's an upright walking canine. I mean, everything he would tell me about it, it just didn't sound right. And I was like, I, and I kind of questioned, are you really seeing this? And I hate to say that, knowing my own background, but we went out one night, and I saw what he was talking about. We were about to go into one of the back fields, one of the hay fields, and there's a road that runs in between. And over on the other side, in this other field that's, well, it's still pretty wooded, but some of the trees have been cut down now. There was this thing just standing there. And I'm telling you, this thing was huge. And it looked gaunt, like really gaunt. Like, to me, it looked like a skeleton that had the fur like just thrown over it. And he was right. Its eyes looked like a reddish orange, very strange, and it was just standing there. And I mean, you could see every little bone in this thing. It was really creepy, and it was really big. It scared me so bad. I said, "Nope, nope, I'm not going out tonight." I said, "We're just gonna go back to the house." And I literally, we turned the four-wheelers around and we went back because I was like, I saw it and I just started freaking out. And he looked over and he was like, "That's that thing I told you." And I will be honest, I think it was a Wendigo because it looked like it was starving, and it
Nope.
just, it did not look right. And I told him, I said, "I don't know what all," because we have seen some very strange things up there. And what you were saying about a little print, I actually, I need to find it. It's on my other phone, but I took a bunch of video and pictures up there last year. But I was out walking one day over near, we call it the Pines, but I was about to walk into the Pines, and there was like, I don't know, I would even call it Carolina like dirt, which is just meaning it's just really good like red dirt. And there is a mound there, and there was this tiny footprint, and I mean tiny footprint, one tiny footprint, but it was deep. And for the life of me, I could not figure out, because I'm telling you, it's just this tiny little heel and tiny little toes. You would think that someone had an infant out there or something. But I would say human, probably 2 or 3 year old, like a fat, chubby. That is what this print looks like. And I was actually watching something about someone who had the little print foot, I don't know, it's supposed to be a baby Sasquatch's print. And what he said made sense to me because I kept trying to figure out how did that one little footprint get there. And when I was watching the show, the guy said what they figured happened, which would make sense, is imagine a little baby that's trying to get down, wanting to explore, knowing it can't, but babies wiggle all the time. It gets one foot down and it's able to make that one little print before it gets yanked back up, which made sense to me. But I couldn't find any other prints, just that one little print. And that little print has absolutely baffled me about how that one little print got there.
Wow.
But it was a deep little print. That was the thing. I mean, you could tell. I would say that little print was probably, I don't know, at least well, maybe not half an inch deep, maybe a little less than half an inch deep. But it's a really nice print. And I wish, because I'm now got the stuff to cast, but it's stuff like that, like finding stuff like that just baffles me when I find stuff like that. And it all happens on his property. And his aunt come in one day saying that there was this little thing out in the driveway. She works late shift, and I thought, are you sure your eyes aren't just bothering you? You're tired. And but sure enough, we went out there, and there was, and I can't even begin to describe to you what this little thing looked like. It was about the size of a raccoon, and no, it wasn't a raccoon. I'm beginning to think, and I have a real hard time wrapping my mind around portals, but I'm beginning to think he has a portal on his property somewhere, because we have seen and have witnessed so many weird things that it just doesn't make sense at all.
Wow.
And I don't know what's going on up there. And I even told him, because he was yelling at me for so long to come up there and look around and investigate some. But I told him, I said, I'm probably going to have to bring in help, because some of this is way out of my realm. Because I mean, I'll do the Sasquatch. I'll even do some of the ghost stuff, but some of it is just so weird. I don't know what to think. It's just very weird. It's just weird crap going on there. You see weird lights. I mean, there is a lot of high strangeness going on in this particular area, and I don't know what to make out of it. I really don't.
Wow. That is some epic stuff right there. I do love how you just shared all that with us and to the audience. You think we can't top that? Well, we are going to top that, even though that was some of the coolest and scariest information recently I've had a chance to dive into. Well, Mr. Barber, are you ready to have some nightmares later tonight?
We're ready for it.
All
You know,
right. It's going to be some pretty creepy stuff. Well, to the audience, yes, because Ellie had to live this unfortunate encounter, which, well, yes, we are here now being able to verify it and talk about it and try and figure out what's lurking out in the woods. Yet, this was a very traumatizing encounter. All right. And this happened to Ellie when she was younger. Yes. Her and her friend were going to meet their boyfriends. Ellie's boyfriend had come and picked her up. Her girlfriend also was there, and they were heading over now to get her friend's sidekick, as they are not really supposed to be out at this point in time. They obviously don't want to just roll up to their other friend's house with the lights on and get them all busted for potentially sneaking out. So they park. Ellie's boyfriend gets out, heads off to go get their other friend. As they are sitting there in the car, just having a good old time, chatting, excited that they're going to have some fun tonight, hanging out, they begin to hear something very strange outside of their Jeep. Yes, something that seemed to be bipedal. It was at first, well, seemingly circling the Jeep. Of course, no one really wants to see potentially what is outside, because a part of you hopes it's your boyfriend. But then the part of you is like, wait a second, no, this isn't. Well, as the girls are sitting here, obviously now a little bit in shock as to what's occurring, they begin to hear this thing trying to either open the doors, comprehend how to open the doors, or just troll them, letting both Ellie and her friend know that at any point in time, I can get you. Yet, as this creature then is seemingly at the back of the Jeep, Ellie realizes, oh crap, let's lock the door. Because, yes, even though I would like some more protection here, boom. Well, that sound seemingly causes this creature to be alerted. Well, at this point in time, unfortunately, Ellie gets a look at what this savage looking beast is. Luckily, and yes, awesomely, hopefully, as Ellie's boyfriend and her friend's boyfriend start coming back to the Jeep, it seemingly discouraged this creature. Yet there was some sort of awful howl that was let out. Ellie is sitting here with us right now. She did survive all of this insanity that occurred to her. Yet I myself am a artistic individual from being an actor and model and having to play roles. It's just a gift of mine to always put myself in the feet of the individual that's experiencing things. So when I first saw your encounter on These Woods Are Haunted, right, I was like, what the heck? Because it was later at night. I'm just sitting here in bed trying to process like what this poor girl at point in time was experiencing with her friend. Now fast forward, I get a chance to talk to you quite frequently, being able to get you on here. What do you think that was? I know even Linda Godfrey said she preferred not to necessarily have used the term Dogman, yet we do here with my science team think there is a difference between dogmen and werewolves. All right. And at some point in time, I will gladly sit down with you and show you, all the analytics and everything, that support that and why I and my science team feel there's a difference. Yet from your experience, do you and your friend think it was a actual dogman, or do you think potentially it might have been a werewolf?
Well, I mean, I know you saw my encounter on These Woods Are Haunted, but if you acted, they tend to a lot of times when they recreate stuff, they don't do it exactly right. And I
Yep.
did like the episode, but there was things that was not correct. First, we were in an old '69 Camaro. That's why the first thing that actually happened is we smelled something. Um, it smelled like something rotten, blood, wet dog, and there was this other real musky smell. And I always tell people, being raised on a farm, to me, it smelled like when a boar hog wants to breed. The polite
Mm.
way of saying it, they put off this very musky smell. And because at first my brain went to, it could a hog have somehow come down out of the mountains, because I was only 14 at the time. It was in 1987. The first thing, like I said, we smelled it, and then it rocked that Camaro. Um, and at first we did think it was our boyfriend's, but by about the third rock, it was real violent. And at that point, enough that you could hear the suspension squeaking on the car. I knew, because he had just painted this car and he had spent a fortune painting it. So I was fairly sure he wouldn't do that to that vehicle because he loved it so much. And then the next thing that happened was we heard twisting. It was twisting metal. That's exactly what it sounded like, twisting metal. And it started at the driver's side, like at the front of the car at that quarter panel. And it started coming down, because when it started coming down the car, I mean, at this point, we knew for sure it was absolutely not our boyfriend's, because he would never damage that vehicle that way. I looked over and realized his door was unlocked, and it was coming down that quarter panel towards that door. So, of course, automatically, I just jumped over, because, those Camaros, those consoles back then, they weren't that big, but the cars were long. But I jumped over it and I just slammed to lock his door. And when I did that, this happened in like November. It was really cold out, and we had been talking, so the windows were all steamed up in the car. And when I did that, it kind of put me nose to nose with that window, but the window was fogged up. But it was, when I looked up and I moved, I like wiped the window just a little bit, because you could hear it. And this was the weird thing. I thought, because I could hear something moving. In fact, I thought it was so heavy that it was popping the gravel. And I know that sounds stupid, but you got to remember, I was 14. And I thought, dear God, what could be so daggum heavy that it's literally popping the gravel? But now, from other experiences of talking to people and learning that some people do believe their bones shift, I think it's bone shifting when it stood.
Ah.
And all I saw was its muzzle at first, and it happened super fast, because when I wiped it, it breathed out, and all I could see was like, and it looked like it looked like a wolf or a dog muzzle, and it just rose up really fast. And when it did that, I knew it was male, because, well,
Hmm.
it was so tall that its stuff was all in my face, basically. So I knew it, whatever was out there was, and I couldn't figure out what could be so big and tall. And of course, my brain went to bear. I mean, you think of a lot of things, but in the back of my head, I kept thinking, no, that looked like a dog, and it had growled too. So it just, none of it was computing, because bears, I mean, bears, well, bears tend to roar, and they do this weird little chuff when they're trying to warn you to back off, basically. It didn't sound like that. It sounded like a canine growl. And so all of this in my head at that moment just wasn't really computing. And when that happened, of course, I jumped back, and my friend was like, well, what in the world? What is it? And I was like, I couldn't even talk, because I didn't know what I'd seen. I wasn't sure what it was out there. And it started shaking the car. And when it would shake the car, my friend would freak out and she would scream. And I was trying to tell her she needed to be quiet. But I was raised on a farm with a lot of dangerous, and we had big bulls. We had my dad used to wild boar hunt. We even had some piglets that were half wild boar. And let me tell you, those things are very mean. So I was raised around, hunting dogs and all this stuff. And all I could think of at the time was her screaming. It seemed to be making it angry because that's when it would shake the Camaro. And I was trying to tell her to get down and to be quiet because those floorboards of the Camaros, she could have put like her bottom in one side and threw her feet, on the other side and got down far enough that probably she couldn't have been seen very much. And I had already gotten into the floorboard of on my side, and I was small enough that I could get completely in the floorboard of that Camaro and not be seen. And we could hear it walking when she finally started calming down. We could hear it moving around, and it went to the back of the car, and it knelt down. And we could people always ask me, was it a full moon? It was not a full moon, but we could see just a little bit, like from the moonlight, that you could see its ears twitching and you could see its snout when it like knelt down.
Wow.
And it was messing with the lock on the Camaro. And I was like, is this thing trying to figure out how to get in here? And I told people, I can't remember because it all happened so fast, but considering it did lift up on the door handle on my side, I'm betting it did lift that other door handle when it come down the car. And I
Mhm.
probably just didn't notice it because I had freaked out and jumped back in my seat. But and of course she was like, what is going on? What is it? What is it? And I'm thinking it was looking for a way in, and I don't know why. I mean, I look back on what happened to us, and I always wonder why didn't it just break the glass, because it could have. Of course, I say that, but people encounter bears, and a bear can break glass too, and they rarely do it either. So
Mhm.
I don't know why it did what it did, but when I realized my door wasn't locked and I needed to lock it because it was still at the back of the car, and I was just hoping it wasn't here when I locked the door.
What the
But
heck?
when I locked it, it immediately stopped and like messing with the trunk, and it ran, literally ran, because you could hear it and it was heavy because it just the footfalls, you could tell it was super heavy. It ran to my door. And when it ran over to my side, that's when it literally lifted up the door and was trying to open it. And thank God I had locked it, because if I hadn't have, it probably at some point would have come over to that side and opened that door up on me. And I don't know what I would have done. I don't know. I guess just being young, I knew my door was locked, but I was still holding on to the door for dear life, thinking, God, if it gets it open, what am I going to do? Because I knew whatever it was big. And I was pretty sure I wouldn't be able to hold that door. And at one point, I just freaked out because when it was pulling at the door, she started freaking out again, my friend. At one point, I got really upset and just told it, please go away, just leave us alone. And I started getting upset, crying and screaming at it. And all of a sudden, it just, for no rhyme or reason, it just quit. I don't know why. It stopped pulling at the door, and it got super quiet. And she was like, where is it? And I was like, I don't know. I didn't think it had left though, because I didn't hear it move away, but you could hear like a breathing sound. So I was pretty sure it was outside of my door. And to this day, I don't really know why I checked, because, like I said, I didn't hear it run away. And I could hear like a breathing, a soft breathing outside of the door. I don't know. I guess young. I don't know. But I wiped it away. And when I did, it was looking at me. And it was probably, I don't know, 6 inches probably. The glass was between us, pretty much. That was it. And I just froze. but I looked at it enough. It had scars. It had scar over its eye. It had scars down its snout. It was graying, so I think it was older. It had these weird yellowish ember eyes. Um, I mean, honestly, looking back, it was terrifying, but they're also very. I don't. This sounds crazy. They're also very beautiful creatures because it, it's just so amazing to see something like that because it's just so big and it's. I mean, you could just tell it's so powerful. And it growled. It like, you know how a dog growls and they'll kind of lift up their lip. It didn't like open its mouth and growl at me, but it just kind of growled and like you could see like how white the teeth were, and it looked like it had so many teeth it just couldn't even fit all the teeth in its mouth. I mean, it had a lot of teeth, a lot of teeth, and all of a sudden it just whipped its head like looking down the road where our boyfriend should be coming from, and I had already thought, dear God, this thing's going to tear our boyfriends to shreds. But for whatever reason, it like looked down the road, it looked one more time at me, and then it shot off into the woods. The door was still locked when they got there. I hadn't even unlocked them. And of course, they were like, "Why is the door locked?" And we let them in, and they got in, and we wanted to go home at that point. We were so freaked out and crying and upset, and they didn't know what had happened. They were out trying to get out of us, what happened. But we were so hysterical that we weren't making a lot of sense to them. Uh,
Understandable.
and we got them to back up, and just as we were about to go, it did. It was like this crazy, like it, and I tell people it was like a scream howl or a howl scream. It was just really weird. It I don't know. It kind of starts off as a howl that turns into a scream. It's a very strange sound. And yeah, that was my original encounter. So that probably the whole time it really wasn't that long. It was probably 10 to 12 minutes that this whole encounter took place. But the next day my boyfriend come over and he was in trouble because his dad thought he wrecked his car. And when he come over, he was like, "I got to show you something," because of course by this time we had talked about it and stuff, and I calmed down enough that I could tell him, what we saw and what happened. And when he come over to, he showed me, he had me come outside with him, and that whole quarter panel of his car was ripped to shreds. Like something had literally, it to me. I mean, it looked like it was weird. It was like something had been strong enough that it could literally puncture it and then tear the metal. And there was blood and hair and tissue. But you got to remember, we were young. I wish I had been smart enough to collect that back then, but it had cut itself on it. But undoubtedly, it didn't care. But it had literally just punctured that car. It looked like. So I'm assuming their claws or nails or whatever are super strong because it just punctured it and just tore it down the side. And his dad thought it was wrecked because of the way it looked, like the metal, like he had like run over, something that had gone into the car, like a mailbox. He said his dad even asked him if he hit a fence or something that would have done that to the car. Yeah, it was really weird because he was like, "What in the did y'all see?" He was like, "Because whatever it was," he was like, "Look how strong it was." And that's the part I don't get because if it could do that to metal, why didn't it just bust the window? It could have. Personally, because I saw when he come over that day that there was hair and blood, it looked like some type of tissue. Whatever we encountered was flesh and blood. And I know, some people believe that these things are demonic or whatever. And I'm not discounting that or discrediting that. I think maybe there are different things different people see, and maybe one does resemble this that is I don't know, spiritual, demonic, whatever you want to call it. But what I saw was absolutely flesh and blood because it left flesh and blood behind. It was flesh and blood. So whatever it was up walking around. And the reason it took the guy so long to come back, we found out, is my friend's boyfriend. They had a bunch, because back then a lot of people around here had horses. We had horses, we had cattle. They had had something spooking their horses, and they had had a couple of animals too. We had a cow that got, no joke, we found it laying down in the we called it the bottoms, but it was, we had over 200 acres. It was way down in the pasture near the wood line. So it was just all very strange because there was a lot of people with farms around here that were experiencing, having issues with animals going missing. And when I saw that thing that night, and it was so close to his house, it just made me think, this is what's disrupting your animals, and this is what is scaring and harming things around here. So now that I know more, because back then we didn't have anything. In my head, did I think I had just encountered a werewolf? This is the thing. I did not believe that it was a person that turned into, this creature. I want to make that very clear. But did I think that it was something that was that way all the time? Yes, I did. I thought it was something that looked like a werewolf, and maybe this is what people thought was people turning in, but it's just actually an animal. But in my mind, but you got to remember my background, being Native American, coming from a hunting family, I just, in my mind, I had to rationalize it too, of course. And it left the fur and the hair, or the fur, the blood, the tissue behind. It had to have been, something living and breathing. And we had all these animals missing around here. So I believe the one I ran into was an upright walking canine, not necessarily a werewolf, but just an upright walking canine. Considering he was graying, I wonder if maybe he either got to where he couldn't hunt with his group or pack, whatever you want to call them. Um, or maybe he had been, because he was huge. Maybe he had been an alpha. I don't know. Maybe a younger one come in, took over, and he got threw out. I kind of wonder. Maybe. I don't know.
Epic stuff. How about this? Since we do need to let you get rolling tonight, on our next episode, if you would like, I can also bring Mr. Barber back, or maybe some scientists, or just myself, whatever you'd like to do. Make a list of some questions that you potentially would like some answers to. First off, though, I just really wanted to thank you in general for your time and your kindness, but also really distinguishing and getting out that proper information right there, because yeah, it's awesome to hear it from you.
Well, thank you. And that would be great. And like I said, that was the first one I seen. Last year, I got to see two more. One was in a tree, one was standing at the wood line up at Bristol's dad's house. They weren't like major. The one in the tree scared the crap out of me, but because I didn't expect it to be there. But maybe we can talk about those encounters. And who knows? I go
Yeah,
back up there, I might have more encounters by the time I come on next time. I don't know. I haven't been back up there. But he's wanting me to come up, and I do need to go back up there and see what's been going around since I was up there last. Plus, we have a bunch of cameras out. So,
wow.
but yeah, I would love to come back, and definitely, if you have a science team, I would definitely love to speak with them.
Yeah,
Because, yeah, I mean, like I said, I think more groups need to be working together. I don't think any of us are going to get very far in this field if we don't start cooperating with one another and realizing it's not a race or a competition, and that we need to actually be sharing information and helping one another instead of, I don't know, the opposite.
Yes, I love it right
So
there.
I would love to
Deal.
come back, and I'd love to hear more of Mr. Barber's stories and, of course, your stories, because I'm sure you have plenty as well.
Yes, no, great stuff. Barber has had some great stuff, and I do encourage you and him as well, if you'd like to talk some Sasquatch stuff, to make sure and link up. Keep me posted, though. I mean, I would love to get you on at least monthly. If you had more time than that, that'd be great too. But yes, make a list of questions you would like.
All right. And you could let people know too if they want to write into you, because I know a lot of times people have questions they want to ask. I'll be happy to answer any questions your audience has or that you or Mr. Barber has.
Yes, of course. Well, do me a favor before we do let you go. I would like you to give yourself a shout out right now so that everyone can figure out and know where you are.
All right. If people, I'm looking for people who, are having encounters, especially if they're having activity. Right now, I have to stay in North Carolina or the adjacent states. So it could be South Carolina, Virginia. I would go as West Virginia isn't very far, Tennessee, Georgia, places like that. But they can reach me at projectdarktimber@gmail.com, or they can go to YouTube and go to Project Dark Timber Cryptid Encounters with Elle Steadman and contact me there. They can find me on Facebook. Lord knows people find me on Facebook. So, uh, but I just want them to reach out. And even if they're having activity that they don't want me to video and upload to YouTube, but they would still like for me to come out and see what I can find, I would do it just because information is information. And we need more information on both Sasquatch and the upright walking canines. We've got to figure out what they are and try to just figure out more about them. I mean, from how they live to, how they have their offspring, how they raise them. I mean, there's just so many questions that, you know, in my head need to be answered. So hopefully people will reach out and maybe they just want to tell me their encounter, and that's fine too. A lot of people do that. I love hearing people's encounters. So that's how they can reach me.
Boom, you heard that to the audience. I will have up all those links in the description as well. And also, once I venture over to YouTube Studio, we will have Ellie's podcast up under the Midnight Society. She will be back very soon. Mr. Barber, do you have any final thoughts or anything before we let Ellie get back to things she needs to attend to?
Yes, I want to know how much the admission ticket is going to be for part 2 because I cannot wait to hear more.
We'll definitely make sure once Ellie gives me a time frame where she can sit down again, I will definitely make sure to plug you in as well, Mr. Barber.
I mean, normally when people have, I don't want to say normal, most of the time when people have an encounter, the caliber of hers, they are FUBAR for life. So I can't wait to hear how the whole transition thing goes.
Oh, it
Yeah.
took a long time. It took years for I to even talk about this. So yeah, it took a long time.
Well, you're here with us now, and you're a part of the good old Midnight Society and Midnight Lycanthropy. So you're always welcome in the good old Fox Den. So definitely thank you for hanging out with Mr. Barber and myself, Ellie.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. And it was so nice to meet you, Mr. Barber.
Nice to meet you. Hopefully, if you're willing, Kenny can open up a chat and we can exchange some Bigfoot information. And I'll show you some of the 4.5 years, and I can't wait to hear more of what you've done.
Yeah, I would love to talk to you more because, like I said, I always tell people I feel like I'm more of a learner than an investigator, but I guess that is part of investigating is learning. So,
Well,
yeah, I love to talk to people, especially other people that are out in the field, because that's why I wanted to move to being out in the field because I love podcasting, but when you're out in the field, boy, it's a whole different world out there.
well, as of what's it been, 2 years now, I think I'm the poster boy for why not to habituate on other people's property. So I can tell you all about that. It's all over the internet. And
Ooh, you legends, you, I do adore every single one of you. And thank you for hanging out tonight. Please like, comment, subscribe, share the truth to the algorithm. And we will catch you very soon.